Major scoop from Laura Loomer. Ladies and gentlemen, this is massive. Laura Loomer's scoops have been pretty darn good. She has direct access to the White House. She knows what's up. She's been proven right time and time again. And she's saying, ladies and gentlemen, Dan Bongino might quit the FBI. Now, I don't know anything. I'm just some guy sitting here and I saw this tweet. I got some phone calls to make, but as soon as I saw it, I was like, let's go. The simple version. The Epstein story has been botched to such a degree that Dan Bongino is upset over what Pam Bondi has done. And Cash is also upset. They were not consulted on these moves, and now they are pissed. Dan Bongino reported taking the day off, might not even come back to the job. Listen, I have told you this. When Dan Bongino took that job, I said there are very few people that I actually look up to. And that means a lot for me to say because I'm arrogant. Most of my life, I've seen people and said, I can do it better. And then I saw Dan Bongino. He's sharp, he's talented, he's strong, he's a leader, and he gave it all up. A multi-million-dollar enterprise, something I could never, I don't have the strength to do it, so he could be a public servant. And I said, man, that epitomizes what we should strive to be. Very few living people I would say that about, that I look up to them and what they did. Because again, I'm like this headstrong guy who's like, I know what I'm doing. I'm right. I know what's going on. And then, so I see the greatest skateboarders or puck boys or whatever. I'm like, yeah, I get it. I can do it. And then I'm like, I look at Dan. I'm like, man, I could never do that. So when all this Epstein stuff happened, of course, I'm like, man, I don't know. Dan Bongino and Cash are as good as it gets. What is going on? Now, he made the argument yesterday. I was talking to Ian on the uncensored portion of the show, and I said, when I was told that Dan Bongino was compromised, I thought to myself, what earthly thing, and I mean that literally, is going to scare Dan Bongino? Maybe, they threatened his family? But I was like, nah, Mike Cernovich was like, no, please, you think the threat, come on, he knows what that is. And so I'm imagining, like, if Dan Bongino genuinely believes there's nothing here, there's no story, there's no client list, it's all, if he genuinely believes it, as he's seen the evidence, then maybe he's just telling the truth. But if he really believes there is something there and he's lying, what would convince him to lie? And I'm like, so I don't believe he's compromised. And that's why I said earthly. I'm like, dude, if Dan Bongino walked in a room and a guy in a suit said, you're going to do as we tell you or else, Dan's not the guy who's going to be like, oh, no, you've got me. Oh, I'm so sorry. For a 6-figure job, he's going to be like, buddy, I can leave this room right now and go back to my career and I can make 20, 30, 40, 50 million dollars. I don't need this. He's going to tell him what for. And then I'm like, if it's some strange, family or power structure he's never seen before, like if a guy walked up and was like, and threatened him, he's like, bro, I don't even know you. I don't know who you are. So I'm like, what earthly thing would compromise Dan Bongino? He doesn't need money. He is not a man to just side with evil for no reason. He didn't need to. He had his own show, made millions of dollars. He's everything you could want and more, and with his integrity intact. So I thought maybe what made the most sense is what we're hearing now is that Trump has said innocent people, many, many innocent people will be harmed by the release of these files. And that's behind the scenes, one of the rumors about why they might not want to release it. Maybe they went to Dan and said, we're going to go after the bad guys, but there's a lot of people that are going to be destroyed by this who didn't do anything wrong. And I don't mean people on the client list or anything like that. I'm not making the argument the client list is going to have a name that somehow the person was innocent. I'm saying the argument is, aside from those on the client list, there are people who, like, hypothetical. There is a company, and one of the guys on the list will get destroyed, and it will end up with 10 people being fired. They'll lose their jobs. Not a good argument, I know. But let's say there's a guy who was doing wrong by Epstein, and he was going to the island and all that stuff, but unbeknownst to his wife, she was just going to parties in New York, unrelated to any of the evil stuff. But she's going to be listed in these documents, and people are going to make accusations. And maybe there's thousands of people like that, not to mention victims. That's a possibility. I personally still don't know if that warrants. I would argue it doesn't warrant covering this up. It's like, I'm sorry. This is going to happen, right? The other argument is that powerful world leaders will be implicated and it'll cause collateral damage to the U.S. There are reasons why I think Dan Bongino may say we can't do it. But It has to be the craziest of reasons. That's why I say, what earthly thing could it be? Check this out. Laura says FBI Director Cash and Bongino are livid with Pam Bondi over her DOJ memo and lack of transparency from her office regarding the Jeffrey Epstein files. Source tells me that Dan Bongino has taken the day off today from his job as deputy director of the FBI, and there's now speculation on whether or not he will return to his job at the FBI over his disgust with Blondy's lack of transparency and handling of the Epstein files. Pam Bondi, she calls her, has brought total embarrassment to Trump, J.D. Vance, Bongino, and Kash Patel. She has also lied to the American people. I'm told Cash and Bongino are furious with Bondi and the blowback she has caused them with the lack of transparency. Kash Patel and Bongino should call for Blondy's public resignation today to save themselves and to also push for full transparency into the Epstein files. This is an issue the American people care deeply about. Someone needs to be fired for this. Giving Blondy courtesy to resign is more than she deserves. Trump should just fire her. Dude, you know, James O'Keefe says he'll be the tip of the spear, but I'm like, I got to tell you, the electron point of that spear is Laura Loomer. She is the sharpest blade in Trump's arsenal. Her reporting, they call her crazy, they insult her, call her whatever you want. But she is a singular focused blade, and she drops these stories. She has gotten people fired, and she has been right. So they come out in the media and they want to say Laura Loomer this, Laura Loomer that. I'm like, you can insult her character and tell her you think she's crazy. I don't care. She is one of the most consequential people in media. From when she chained her hand to the Twitter door and became a worldwide trend after being banned, to jumping over the fence at Pelosi's house with illegal immigrants. She knows how to get the job done. When I see this, I believe Laura Loomer. I think her source is good. She had a source about Joe Biden being sick and or potentially terminal. And everybody said she was crazy. Everybody said she was lying. What did we just learn? He has had cancer, terminal cancer in his bones. Prostate cancer metastasized to the bone, potentially over years. She was right. I mean, maybe not, like, I don't know about the specifics of what the plane did or whatever, but when she came out and said he is sick, she's got sources. Dan Bongino reported, I got to make some phone calls right now. I'm too excited. I got to make some phone calls, call up some of my sources and be like, guys, what's going on? Dan, taking the day off. Come hang out, brother. I believe Dan and Cash are as good as it gets. It is such a harsh reality to believe that Dan or Cash would be compromised. And I know Dan will not stand for his honor being impugned by the failings of someone else like Pam Bondi. I think, because this is what I was saying, I was like, how have they done it so bad? How have they been so bad at this? Dan Bongino needed only to come out and say, listen, we are investigating this, and it's going to take time. If we release information too soon, the bad guys get away. There's a very easy single sentence and then a wink. We got you. And people would be cheering them on. Instead, you get this memo with no name, no date, saying there's no client list, and Prince Andrew's free to go. No more probe. And Dan's going to be like, what are you doing? Even if the intention was to let him go and drop the case, this is the worst imaginable way to do it. And I don't think Dan or Cash would be party to any of that. So I have to imagine behind the scenes, Dan and Cash are going like, oh, why are they doing this to us? Now, of course, people have pointed out that Cash and Dan have said Epstein killed himself. Here's what I think on this and what I said. I still think Dan and Cash are as good as it gets. I don't think they're compromised. When Dan and Cash first came out and said this, I said, guys, listen, if the FBI has no evidence because it's been destroyed, as a department, what can they say? They're trying to maintain the integrity of a department. So this is not the point for them to come out and opine. I still think they could have delivered it better. Even Cash said, if you've got evidence, give it to us. I don't believe that they're intentionally lying. I think it may be like, and maybe I'm wrong. I don't know, man. But I want to believe in Dan Bongino and I want to believe in Cash. And this reporting has got me very optimistic. But what if it is as simple as they go through the files, there is no evidence of wrongdoing at the prison. They still in their heart of hearts think something doesn't make sense here. But what can the FBI actually say publicly? It does not behoove them to come out and say, despite the fact the department has no evidence, we're going to assert Epstein didn't kill himself because it could compromise any future actions they take. I do still believe they could have handled it better, but we don't know. I've got concerns about all of this. The Epstein story has been the biggest story for a while now. I want answers. If Dan steps down and says they're mishandling it or whatever, then he comes out and talks about it, I think it's a good thing. If Pam Bondi resigns, it's bad. It is. You may not like her. Laura doesn't like her. But finding a new AG is tough. So I got to tell you, my friends, this is major news. Once again, wow, Laura Loomer. This is incredible reporting. And I got to make some phone calls. But I'm going to say this. I have not corroborated this. I'm going to make some calls right now. See what I can corroborate. This is a preliminary report, but I'm going to say this right now. Laura Loomer's sources have proven correct time and time again. That's why I thought it was worthy enough to come with the scoop and cover this the way I am and to mention at Laura Loomer on X. She has been right about a lot. She's even got people fired. She is close to the administration and she's got this info. I think she's probably correct. I think she's proven it enough for me to say this is very likely to be correct. I'm going to make some phone calls. We'll have more tonight, so stick around. Thanks for hanging out. Smash the like button. We'll see you on the next segment.